Welcome to the Foundational Health Podcast, where we provide education and inspiration to help guide you on your journey to look better, feel better, and most importantly, heal better. Hey everybody, welcome to the Foundational Health Podcast. I'm Dr. Kevin Schultz, and today is episode number 1. And what better way to start episode number 1 than with what I call pillar number 1 of foundational health. Pillar number 1, of course, is nutrition. It is the pillar of our health. And so in each episode, the goal is to really break down the entire podcast into 3 different parts. Those 3 different parts, we're going to start each time with bullet points, simple bullet points of what you can expect out of the podcast. And then the second part, we're going to dive into the meat of the podcast. And when I say dive in, I don't mean deep into the science. The goal is to simplify things, to take that complicated science, to simplify it in a very powerful, actionable takeaway that you can utilize right away in your daily life. And then the third part is we're going to have a takeaway section. So what can you take away from this podcast? Simple things that you can incorporate right away into your daily life. Okay, so let's dive right in. The 3 bullet points for today. Number 1 is, how does your body heal through nutrition? So most people don't really give that a lot of thought, but we're going to talk about what does that healing process look like when we're talking about nutrition. Number 2 is going to be talking about the quality of your food. Does quality really matter? And then number 3, there are so many diets out there. Everybody is aware of this. But what should your diet look like for life? Should you be following a keto diet? Should you be following a paleo diet, a carnivore diet, veganism? Which one of those is the best, or is none of those the best? We're going to dive into what that looks like as well. So we're going to start with heal. How does your body heal through nutrition? And a saying that every single one of us has heard probably 100 times in our life: you are what you eat. You are what you eat, but what does that mean exactly? It literally means what it sounds like. You are what you eat, meaning that the food that you put into your body is making up every single cell throughout your entire body. So the science behind that, without diving in too deep, is that our bodies have approximately 30 trillion cells in them. So lots of cells. And every single day, about 330 billion cells die off. But as those cells die off, they are replaced with new cells. So that's fantastic news, by the way. So the cells are dying off, being replaced with new cells, and this is the healing process. You get to decide, are those cells going to be replaced with the same cells by continuing to eat the food that you've already been eating, or are you going to replace those cells, have new cells building every single day with better nutrition that literally is making up your new muscles, your new bone from all of those cells that are dying off. And to be fair, not every single cell dies off in the human body. So you have heart cells, some of the brain cells, some of the cells within your eyes that do not die off. Those are there for life. But if we use the gut, for example, so gut healing is really where I feel, and so many different health experts feel, where healing begins in the body. And we're not going to dive too far into gut healing today at all. But the reason that it's so important is because the cells that line the gut every single week are completely replaced. So approximately every 7 days, every cell in your gut lining dies off and it's replaced with a new cell. And again, this is great news. You get to decide, are those going to be new, better, healthier cells? And it is why people are able to heal their guts so quickly when you're doing the right things. So that healing process, incredibly, incredibly important. And now we're going to dive into number 2, the quality of food. So the quality of food is we're going to spend the majority of our time here. Does quality even matter? You hear arguments on both sides of the table. Some people say calories in, calories out, a calorie is a calorie. A lot of times in the medical world, they're just telling you it doesn't matter what you eat, you just need to get in the right amount of calories. Is that true? Is it not true? You have both sides of the camp always with so many things in nutrition, and that's where it gets so confusing for so many people. So I'm going to try to remove that confusion today as we talk about quality of food. So we already talked about the saying, you are what you eat. And again, as a reminder, what that means is your nutrition is making up the new cells in your body as they're being replaced. But then the second saying is you are what you ate. I'll say that again. You are what you ate. So, a couple questions. Is a hamburger a hamburger? Are they all the same? Is a piece of fish just a piece of fish? Is an egg just an egg? Doesn't matter quality, where it came from. And sometimes, depending on where you are in your nutritional journey, you might not know, like, well, what's the difference? An egg is just an egg. So we're going to break down what that looks like and how food quality, in my opinion, is everything. It really is the determining factor when it comes to your daily nutrition. So you are what you ate. I'm going to use the example of my favorite food. I say this all the time, but if I could only have one food for the rest of my life, without question, it is hamburger. A beautiful, juicy hamburger. Red meat is my favorite. So we're going to use the example of you have a plate, and on that plate are two burgers. One of those burgers comes from traditional meat. So if you're going to the grocery store and you're not seeking out anything different, you're going to a restaurant, you're not seeking out anything different, then you are absolutely positively getting traditional commercial meat. And that traditional commercial meat comes from an animal that likely lived its entire life on a feedlot, and it was fed processed grains, ultra-processed grains, antibiotics throughout its entire life. And the reason, by the way, that animal is pumped full of antibiotics typically is because they know that those animals in their living conditions and with what they're eating, they get very sick. And they get sick because those processed grains that they're eating on a daily basis cause their meat to be inflamed. Now, on the other side of the plate, you have what I eat, which is 100% grass-fed and finished meat. So 100% grass-fed and finished, we'll get into the terminology a little bit later. But for right now, that grass-fed meat looks completely different when you look at it on the inside than that grain-fed meat. Meaning that grain-fed meat is made up of omega-6 fats and other things that not only cause inflammation in the animal's body, but it causes inflammation in your body when you eat it. And this is where red meat often gets a bad rap, and rightly so if you're eating that kind of meat. But if you're eating the grass-fed meat, that meat is, when it's 100% grass-fed, it's full of omega-3s, it's full of other healthy fats that literally decrease inflammation in your body. It can allow your body to heal. It's also, when it's grass-fed, it's full of micronutrients. It's like literally, essentially, when they break it down, it can look like a multivitamin, multimineral. It's so packed full, and the other one has essentially none of those things. So they are not in any way, shape, or form the same product. They look similar, or identical, in fact. They taste very similar, at least I think, but they are a very, very different product. That is a perfect example of why quality is so important. And we could talk about that with every single aspect when it comes to fish, and we'll go into a little bit of detail with this, but when it comes to fish, when it comes to eggs, even when it comes to your fruits and vegetables, quality is literally everything. Okay, so before we dive into some of the details behind different food categories, I want to give you an example of how every single one of you, every single one of us knows that food quality matters. And sometimes I think we are so removed from how the body works and heals and the food that we're putting in on a daily basis that we don't give it a lot of thought. But here's a perfect example, and I've used this in hundreds of workshops that I've taught over the last 24 years, but I call it my dog story. So if you don't have a dog, if you don't have children, just imagine that you do have a dog and children at home. Now, if you walked into the kitchen and you saw your child pouring a bag of Doritos into one side of the dog dish, and then you saw your child pouring a can of Coke, a can of Pepsi, a can of Mountain Dew, whatever it is, into the other side of the dog dish, what would you say to your child? Would you say, hey, thanks for feeding the dog? Probably not. You'd probably say, what are you doing? That's going to make the dog sick, right? We know without a doubt, if you're going to feed your dog Doritos, ultra-processed food, not just picking on Doritos, you can throw anything in there, ultra-processed food, and then sugary beverages like sodas, if you feed that to your dog, everybody knows your dog is going to get sick. Why does that not apply to us? So when you're doing that on a daily basis, do you think it's going to make your body healthier or sicker? Do you think it's going to make your child's body healthier or sicker, especially with what you now know about healing and how the cells die off and are replaced? So are your cells being replaced with ultra-processed Dorito chemicals, or are they being replaced with what I call God food, with fruits and vegetables and real nuts and seeds and real meats and eggs? So that's what we're going to dive into next, is going through some of those different categories. With every one of these categories, I realize we're all at different points in our nutritional journey. So what I want to talk about here is I'm going to give the best case scenario for those of you that are far along in your nutritional journey and really want to take it to the highest level. But for those of you that are nowhere near that you're still eating a very ultra-processed food diet at this point, what we call the standard American diet, I don't want that to be a discouragement to you. So we'll talk about some in-betweens and how you can move in the right direction. So when it comes to meat, in my opinion, number one thing that you should look for is grass-fed organic meat. And not just grass-fed. This is where it gets a little bit tricky, but you have to either know the farmer or know how to read a package. And it has to say 100% grass-fed or 100% grass-fed and finished. In my opinion, you're better off always getting that from a local farmer. The cost is going to be better, and you can actually get to know the farmer. You can buy in bulk. So 100% grass-fed and finished. If it's in a store, it also would need to be organic. But if you're buying it from a local farmer, a lot of times they're not going for that USDA organic label because they don't want to spend the money on that, rightly so, but they're still doing organic processes and organic practices. Now we're going to move on into fish. So is a piece of fish a piece of fish? And the answer is, again, no, definitely not. So you have really two different groups of fish. You have farm-raised fish and you have wild-caught fish. So the farm-raised fish, these fish are not eating anything in their natural diet. They're fed corn and soy pellets. And if I use salmon as an example, because farm-raised salmon is fed corn and soy pellets, their meat is not pink. In fact, it's a very dark, slimy, disgusting gray, and the producers, the farmers of this salmon, know that because of this, there's no way the consumer is going to buy this meat. So as a result, they pump a very nasty chemical in there to turn the color of that meat into a pink color. And if you go to the grocery store, so for instance, in my area, there are Festival Foods, and if you go to Festival Foods and you look in the section at the deli where they have the fish in there, what you'll see is farm-raised fish, which is tagged right next to the wild-caught fish, and you can see the very real differences in those colors. One of them looks very fakey and pink, and the other one looks orange and beautiful and brilliant because that's the wild-caught fish. And just like with the beef or other red meat, that quality is everything there. So the farm-raised fish, full of inflammatory omega-6 fats, void of nutrients and minerals, as opposed to that wild-caught salmon, that wild-caught fish, which is always going to be full of healthy fats, anti-inflammatory, full of tons of nutrients and micronutrients and vitamins and minerals. And so the difference is you're eating one that creates sickness in the body, and you're eating the other that creates health in the body. Here's the tricky part when it comes to wild caught. And this is, again, I don't want you to get discouraged by this, but I think it's really important to know that when they look into the fish industry, they find that most things are mislabeled. So for my family personally, what we do is we stick with the ones according to all of the research on the ones that are the safest. So we search for wild caught Alaskan salmon, wild caught Alaskan sockeye salmon. Is by far the most safe one you can buy. They find that that one is never mislabeled. Whereas other ones like cod and halibut and some of those are mislabeled a lot, even sometimes up to 50% of the time. So we're searching for the wild caught Alaskan salmon, and then we're also looking for things like sardines and anchovies, those smaller fish which have less toxins in them and are almost always wild caught. Moving on to the next category, eggs. So with eggs, exact same thing. So I won't keep repeating myself, but that quality, the diet, everything that they're eating matters tremendously. You can have an inflammatory egg or an anti-inflammatory egg depending on what that chicken is doing. And one thing I haven't even really talked about when it came to the meat or now with chickens is the amount of sunlight, the amount of exercise and movement that animal gets makes a tremendous difference as well. So when it comes to eggs, the quality matters, and my preference is always that you're getting those eggs from a local farmed source, the one that you trust, that you know that those eggs are out to pasture, they're free range, because that can be very misleading when it comes to buying those in the grocery store where they can mislabel them on a regular basis. Next category is dairy. And so with dairy, this is one of the most tricky ones, so I'm going to simplify it. When you're buying dairy and you're going to the grocery store, the ideal situation at a bare minimum is you're getting organic and full fat. So those are the primary things that you're going to look for. Now, if you can get organic, 100% grass-fed, full fat, which most of the time you can, that's certainly an even better option for all the reasons that we've already talked about with the other products. So organic, 100% grass-fed, full fat, and if you do want to take it to the next level, which I know many people do, organic, grass-fed, full fat, and you're buying that from a local dairy. In Wisconsin, you can't do this, but in some states, you can actually buy that raw. And then many of these places that are selling raw dairy in certain states, A2 casein. So A2 casein versus A1 casein, which is the traditional casein in a grocery store from cows, that is inflammatory and causes all kinds of gut problems, whereas A2 casein, which is also what goats are, that is a much better product. But bare minimum, whether you're buying yogurt or anything else, you're looking for organic, full fat, at the bare minimum with everything that you buy, because when it's not full fat, it just means that they're adding more sugar to it to make it taste better. Next category is nuts and seeds. So nuts and seeds, really with this, you have to look at the ingredients of the nuts and seeds first of all, because so many of the nuts and seeds have what we call the evil 8 oils in there. So they'll have these highly processed rancid sunflower oils or highly processed rancid vegetable oils or canola oils or cottonseed oils. So ideally you want to buy something that doesn't have any of those bad oils in, literally no oil. So it's just seeds, nuts, salt. Taking it to the next level is ideally you want to, at a bare minimum, get organic and raw. So like so many things, if it's not organic, it's highly sprayed with pesticides and herbicides and chemicals. And so organic is really, really important when you're getting nuts and seeds. And then the raw means that it is not cooked to high heats, and it's not going to have all of those oils and things in there. So Costco, for example, has all kinds of organic raw nuts and seeds. Now, for those people that really want to take it to the next level and not do it on their own, there's a wonderful company called Wildly Organic out of Minnesota, and they sell bags of all kinds of different nuts and seeds that they've already soaked and dehydrated them for you. The reason that soaked and dehydrated is so important is because of some of the phytonutrients and these enzymes that don't allow you to digest them properly. And again, I realize I'm getting complicated for some of you, so don't overthink this. If you're just looking for a better source, then just get the nuts and seeds without the bad oils in them. But if you're taking it to the next level, soaked and dehydrated is the ideal. Wildlyorganic.com, fantastic website where you can get those, and you can get good nut butters and other things there as well. But if you want to do it on your own, like my beautiful wife Sarah does, then you take the organic raw nuts and seeds, you soak them. First of all, what that means is you're soaking them in water for up to about 24 hours, ideally salt water. So filtered salt water, 24 hours of soaking overnight, and then you're putting them into a food dehydrator around 100 degrees or so. And that food dehydrator, it's going to vary from nut to seed. Some in 24 hours, they're going to be completely dehydrated, and you know that because they're crunchy. And then other ones might take 2 days, 2.5 days, like a cashew, where it's going to be spongy if you try to eat it until it's fully dehydrated. That is far and away not only the best for you, but also I can't even tell you how much better it tastes. So it is like a night and day difference if you eat an organic raw nut compared to a organic soaked and dehydrated nut. Completely different taste profile. Moving on to oils. So with oils, I'm going to really simplify this one because I'm not a fan of oils in general for many reasons. Most oils end up being very rancid. The olive oil industry, sadly, is one of the most corrupt industries in the nation. Certainly you can get good olive oils, places like Paleo Valley, places like Gundry, MD, they have amazing olive oils, but the large majority of them that you're buying on a store shelf, even if it says organic, virgin olive oil, extra virgin olive oil, it's still going to be very rancid and inflammatory for your body. And that would same rules would apply to avocado oil and some of the so-called better oils. But my favorites by far that you typically don't have any worries about is number one, organic virgin coconut oil. And my preference is always getting that in a glass jar so you don't have to worry about any plastics leaching. So organic virgin coconut oil, you can melt that, you can drizzle it, for instance, over popcorn. Tastes fantastic if you're trying to avoid butter. And then it also cooks to high heats very safely. So you can use it for cooking. I hear so many times when I'm talking to my patients or doing a workshop where they will say, I hate coconut. I can't stand the taste of coconut. And I promise you, coconut oil doesn't somehow taste like coconut. And in fact, most people find that it adds kind of like a mild, sweet flavor to your meat, to your eggs, or whatever you're cooking with. So that's fantastic. And then this is something that's new to my family, but we've been using a lot more, and it's fantastic. If you can get an organic, grass-fed beef tallow, absolutely not only amazing to cook with, but also one of the best skincare products that you can ever use, believe it or not. And no, it does not leave you smelling like beef fat. So I get mine from a place called lineage.com. One of the people that I follow, Paul Saladino, MD, that's one of his companies. Fantastic, fantastic product. So those are my two favorites. Certainly there's other ones out there that are okay, but those ones are going to be ones that are trustworthy all the time, and that'll really simplify things for you when it comes to oils. Fruits and vegetables. So if we go back to what you are, what you ate, certainly we're not thinking of fruits and vegetables when we're thinking about something that it ate, but they also eat. Fruits and vegetables are eating what's in the soil. They're eating what's sprayed on them. And so if you're taking an organic fruit and vegetable versus a commercially pesticide, chemically herbicide sprayed fruit and vegetable that's usually grown in nutrient void soil, it's going to also be a completely different makeup and profile. One's full of toxicity and the other one is not. When it comes to fruits and vegetables, bare minimum, just eat more. Even if they're not organic, eat more of them, and it's going to be better for you as a whole. Fruits and vegetables, you want to get as many varieties, as many colors as possible with both of those. And then If you're ready to make the jump to organic, there's a really great website, ewg.org. And ewg.org, what they do every single year is they give you the Dirty Dozen and the Clean 15 list. The Dirty Dozen, just like it sounds, it's the dirtiest. They're the ones that are sprayed the most heavily with chemicals like pesticides and herbicides. And then you have the Clean 15 are the least sprayed with chemicals and pesticides. So an example of how to use that list, if you're not ready to buy everything organic for whatever reason, and usually that's cost, but if you're not ready for that, then with the fruits and vegetables on the Clean 15 list, or on the Dirty Dozen list rather, those would be the ones that you would want to buy organic whenever possible. And then on the Clean 15 list, if I use an example of one that's on there all the time that we don't buy organic most of the time, that's an avocado. So avocados, very minimally sprayed, sometimes not sprayed at all, and they find very little pesticide residue in that avocado when they study it. So it's a perfect example of how you don't have to always buy organic and you can still get a great product. So that ewg.org Dirty Dozen Clean 15 is a fantastic resource, and that website is full of all kinds of other great resources that we'll cover in other podcasts as well when we talk about toxicity with products. So great website, great resource. So topic number 3 is, what is the best diet to follow? So this is where it gets really, really confusing for a lot of people. There's so many different choices out there, and depending on the podcast that you're listening to, the newsletters you subscribe to, you're going to hear some very, very strong opinions. So if we look at some of the strongest opinions out there, and probably the 4 biggest camps when it comes to strongest opinions, you have veganism or vegetarianism. So they will tell you that if you're not strictly eating fruits and vegetables and you're eating animal products instead, if you're eating animal products, you're going to die early. You're going to get cancer, you're going to get heart disease, all of these things that animal products cause. And then if you look at the carnivore camp, the carnivores tell you that if you're not solely eating red meat, in fact, strict carnivores are eating red meat and salt, and that's it, literally. And so if you're not doing that, you're going to die early because plants are killing you. Plants contain protective chemicals in there that will poison your body and kill you. And so, first of all, that's not my belief, by the way, just to reiterate. That's the carnivore belief and the veganism belief. And then you also have the paleo diet. You have the keto diet. And so you have all of these very strong different nutritional camps with very strong opinions, and they will tell you that that is what you need to be doing for life. So I'm going to simplify that for you. To simplify that and explain why I'm simplifying that and why I feel so strongly about this, I'm going to use 2 extreme examples. And these technically are kind of like blue zone type cultures around the world. So you can look at a culture in northern Alaska, northern Canada, even in Greenland. The traditional natives of that area were called the Inuit people. When they studied their diet, the large majority of their diet was made up of whale and seal meat and fat or blubber. That was the large majority of what they ate. They also ate polar bears, they ate caribou, depending on the season, but strictly meat. They were eating meat and fat and protein, and really, that's it. And guess what? They lived incredibly long, healthy lives traditionally. And then if you look at the extreme opposite of that, you have cultures like there's some South Pacific islands that eat 95% of their calories throughout their lifetime. 95% of their calories come from sweet potatoes. Or you have the Seventh-day Adventists in California that eat strictly vegetables. They also, both of those cultures, disease-free lives for the most part, live close to 100 years of age in fantastic, great health. So how does that happen? So if the carnivores are right, then there shouldn't be these cultures that are living these long, healthy lives that are eating vegetables and fruits, right? And if the vegans are right, then there shouldn't be the Inuit people of Alaska that are living these long, healthy lives, disease-free. So who's right? So I'm going to talk a little bit more about the Inuit people before I get into my opinion on this. So the Inuit people, there's this tremendous study which we'll give you access to from the British Medical Journal. If you don't know, the British Medical Journal is considered by most people as one of, if not the most prestigious medical journal in the world. In the British Medical Journal, there was a group of researchers that looked specifically at the native Inuit people. And here's what they found. Prior to 1950 or mid-1950s, in the Inuit people that, again, are eating whale and seal blubber pretty much exclusively, they found that they had little to no incidence of heart disease. In fact, at that time, their heart disease death rate was 1/18th of what it was in the continental United States. 1/18th. A half would be fantastic, but theirs was 1/18th. And then if you looked at diabetes, this study said it was virtually non-existent. Diabetes didn't exist. Well, how can that be? So we're told on a daily basis that if you're eating these animal fats and animal proteins that you're going to die, it's going to clog your arteries, eggs kill you because they contain cholesterol. So I'm here to tell you that that is a lie. It's an absolute lie. It's very misleading information, and all you have to do is look at these cultures to find that it's not true when you're eating quality. So clearly, these people weren't eating farm-raised, grain-fed animals, and they weren't eating farm-raised whales and farm-raised seals that were fed corn and soy pellets. They were eating the real deal. And so what we know is that with these Inuit people, it used to be extremely healthy. Sadly, starting in the mid-1950s, they started importing pastas and flours and breads that were highly processed. And then as they followed them, what happened is they continued to get more and more and more sick as a culture. As they ate more processed carbohydrates and sugars, because processed carbohydrates break down into sugars, those processed carbohydrates and sugars raised LDL levels, they raised triglyceride levels, which were otherwise incredibly low eating whale and seal blubber. The processed carbohydrates raised LDLs, they raised triglycerides, and they raised diabetes rates to a point where they now have diabetes in those cultures at a rate higher than what we do in the continental United States, because they actually eat more of it than we do. And they also raised heart disease death rates to the point where they also surpass us now in that, sadly. And so the culprit is not eating fat and eating protein and eating animal products. The culprit is not eating too many vegetables. The culprit is processed food. Processed food is what's killing us. So this is great news, by the way. So if everything so far has sounded complicated to you, and if you've gotten discouraged because you feel like it's too much and you can't do all of those right things, the takeaway here is that if you're avoiding ultra-processed foods or reducing, I'm not saying you have to even avoid it entirely, if you're reducing processed foods and eating more of the real deal, eating what I call God food versus man food, I promise you, your body will heal, you will look better, you will feel better, you will heal better, because you're doing the right things for your body and giving your body what it needs. And you don't have to worry about all of the, am I doing the right thing? Should I be following this diet? Should I be following that diet? There's a time and place, in my opinion, for carnivore. There's a time and place for paleo, time and place for keto. They're incredibly healing. Time and place for veganism. But you don't have to worry about following any of those for a lifetime. For a lifetime, you're eating God food instead of processed man food. Okay, our final part number 3, is the takeaways. So here's the takeaways today. Hopefully you've already had some takeaways without me going through some things, but I'm going to give you some really simple things that I think are really important. The one is, depending on where you're at in your nutritional journey, your health journey, I always recommend the add before you subtract rule, the plus before minus, as I call it. So what that means is, if right now your breakfast is stopping at Quick Trip and getting a big gulp, I don't even know if that's what it's called, but you're getting some sugary drink and you're getting a donut, and that's what your breakfast looks like right now, and you're not ready to give that up, well, don't give that up. So this is where the add before you subtract takes away. You don't have to give that up, but try adding an apple, try adding a banana. And I can tell you with working with thousands of people over the years that can be very powerful. They find like, holy cow, I added a banana to my coffee and donut in the morning, and all of a sudden I feel remarkably better. My digestion's improving, and then that becomes addictive. So plus before minus if you're not ready to go all the way in, which most people aren't. The second one, and I can thank my amazing wife for this, it is never leave home without a cooler. So everybody knows that if you're driving somewhere, whether it's just back and forth from work or you're going on vacation, you get hungry. And even if you try to avoid fast food and processed food, you're going to stop and you're going to satisfy that hunger. So my family's secret, my secret now, I literally don't leave home without a cooler. When I came to film this podcast today, I had a cooler packed with some hamburgers, some hard-boiled eggs in there, some macadamia nuts. I don't leave home without my cooler, and it is an absolute lifesaver to keep me on track. The next rule, and this is a really simple one, you probably heard it a million times, but it is so powerful when you're starting to make changes, which is never shop hungry. So even for myself, if I go into a grocery store and I know everything that I want to eat and that I should eat, if I'm starving, it's really, really hard for me not to avoid the frozen pizza section. So never shop hungry, and you're always going to make better choices. And of course, if you take that to the next level, never shop hungry and then shop the perimeter of the grocery store, which is less likely to have all of those ultra-processed foods. And then number 4 on that list is make your calories count. Do not count your calories. If you want to count your calories, go for it. If that works for you, I know people that they've been doing it for years and they do it very well, and they can't imagine not doing it. For me, I can't even fathom counting my calories. I think this is what complicates nutrition. And for a lot of people, I find that when they're trying to do that, this is where they fall off the wagon. So don't count your calories, in my opinion. Make your calories count. And that goes back to everything that we talked about today, where you're eating God food instead of eating the man food, because it's not the calories, it is the quality of the calories that count. A calorie is not a calorie. Nobody will ever convince me that 100 calories of Doritos is equivalent to 100 calories of fruits and vegetables. It just simply doesn't work that way, whether we're talking fat loss, but most importantly, when we're talking overall health and longevity and how you look, feel, and heal. Final takeaway, and I'll probably talk about this on many of my episodes because I feel so strongly about it. Whether you look at yourself as a leader or not, whether you feel you're a leader, you are a leader. Your children are watching, your grandchildren are watching. I don't care if you don't have children or grandchildren. Then you're a leader to your coworkers. You're a leader to the people at your church. You're a leader no matter where you go because people are watching what you do. And it took me a long time to learn this lesson, where I tried to, as I learned so many different things about health and wellness and nutrition, I tried to just absolutely cram that down the throats of my friends and family members. And I can tell you it doesn't work. In fact, if anything, it pushed them further away. So you're a leader and you lead by example. If you lead by example for your children, for your grandchildren, I promise they're going to make better choices. And really, it's the only way that we're going to change the health of this country, which, if you didn't know, it's on a horrible, horrible trajectory right now. The only way that we're ever going to change that is if you see yourself as a leader, you start to make those changes, and you lead by example. Hopefully you got something really powerful, even if it's one simple thing out of this episode. And I look forward to you joining me on this journey. My goal for every single one of you is to help you do what I feel like I've accomplished in my life, which is to make health your hobby so that you can look, feel, and heal better. Thank you for listening to the Foundational Health Podcast. As always, if you would like to learn more about making health your hobby, visit our website at foundationalhealth365.com and follow me on Facebook at Kevin Schultz, DC, Foundational Health.